and welcome to another Coffee with Kilroy. Taking a break from American Civil War week to do something a little bit different. Today is 4th of July, so what do you think I'm going to do today? Well, if you're here in the States, you're probably celebrating the 4th of July with fireworks and hot dogs and hamburgers and grilling out and family and friends, and I hope you are all enjoying that and being safe. If you're not in the States or associated with the States, then you're probably looking for something different, and today is something different. I'm going back to Tales of War, great stories from military history for every day of the year. I got this a local bookstore, maybe out of the bargain bin, as I'm apt to do. It's from W.B. Marsh and Bruce Carrick, and basically it has a military anecdote or passage for every day of the week. And I'll put a link to the previous time I've looked at this, and I might go to this time and again. You know, I've got 365 chances to do it. But let's look at July 4th entry today and get a little bit of coffee here, because this segment is also known as Beverage in a Book, my beverage coffee. And the book today is, let's get that way out of the way there, Tales of War. So let's go to the entry I wanted to look at here. 4th July, okay, or 4 July. Saladin triumphs at the Horns of Hattin, or Hattin. 1187, so this is during the Crusades, Middle Ages. The two large hills known as the Horns of Hattin lie just a few miles west of the Sea of Galilee in northern Palestine. And it was there that today the most famous Saracen, Saladin, totally destroyed the power of the Christian kingdom of Jerusalem. Like all Saracen leaders, Saladin was a Kurdish Turk. He had once served as a young officer under Nur-ed-Din, the ruler of Syria. And on Nur-ed-Din's death in 1174, Saladin became the leader of the Muslim Orthodoxy in the Middle East. During the evening of 3 July, 1187, Saladin's great army completely surrounded the smaller Christian force under the command of the king of Jerusalem, Guy de Lisanan. I know I'm going to butcher this, guys, sorry. An eyewitness tells the tale. As soon as the Christian army, were encamped, Saladin ordered all his men to collect brushwood, dry grass, stubble, and anything else with which they could light fires and make barriers, which he had made all around the Christians. They soon did this, and the fires burned vigorously, and the smoke from the fires was great, and this, page turn, together with the heat of the sun above them, caused them discomfort and great harm. Saladin had commanded caravan and camels loaded with water from the Sea of Tiberias, today known as the Sea of Galilee, to be brought up, and had water pots placed near the camp. The water pots were then emptied in view of the Christians, so that they should still have greater anguish through thirst, and their mounts too. When the fires were lit and the smoke was great, the Saracens surrounded the host and shot their darts through the smoke, and so wounded and killed men and horses. By the next morning, the Christians were dying and desperate. King Guy had no choice but to attack the larger enemy force. A division of knights charged at a large squadron of Saracens. The Saracens parted and made way through and let them pass. Then, when they were in the middle of them, they surrounded them. Only 10 or 12 knights escaped them. After this division had been defeated, the anger of God was so great against the Christian host because of their sins that Saladin vanquished them quickly between the hours of tierce and nons, so 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. He had won almost all the field. So that's a quote from the time period. Most of the European nobles who survived, including the king of Jerusalem, were captured and held to ransom. The Christian army was totally destroyed, and 15,000 foot soldiers were sold into slavery. The Knights Templar and Hospitaller, who were taken prisoner, were given the grim choice to convert to Islam or face execution. Some 230 Templars and a small number of Hospitallers refused and were beheaded as Saladin watched seated on a dais in front of his army. 3 months later, Jerusalem fell to Saladin after 88 years of Christian rule. see 2nd October. So a little bit of precursor there. We might look at that later in the year. When the news reached Europe, the Christian world went into shock. According to the contemporary testimony, Pope Urban III, who was at Ferrara, died of grief when he heard the news. After him was Gregory VIII, who was of saintly life and only held the see for 2 months before he died and went to God. So there is your 4th of July. A little bit different. Something you probably were not expecting on 4th of July, but the Horns of Hattin. So, what do I have for you today? I always have a special guest, don't I? So the special guest is Saladin himself. So this is a game from Shakos, who was kind enough to send this to me. I'll put a link to that in my description as well. I did an unboxing of this game. But I also, and it's by Denis Savage. And so, interesting game. I call this a static battle game because that's basically what it is. You're going to have these wooden planks here are going to represent your forces, and they have a position on the board. That's why I call it kind of static battle. There's going to be a certain situation, and they don't necessarily move around like in areas, or they don't move hex to hex. They're either like move up to a position or they're eliminated from a position. And that's basically the game here. The core of the game is these cards, which are your different leaders. And they're going to have orders. See that little circle there? These are the orders. And so this costs 0, so it's probably not going to be good for you. And it's not, because you roll 3 of the enemy dice. And enemy dice are usually bad because they're either like you lose an order or you get hits. And if you get hits, you take your planks or your armies or your units off the board, and they go over to here. Once this gets filled up with 6 of these units here, then these go out off the board into the box, and then you lose an order. And that's the key to the game. You start off with a certain number of orders depending on the battle. There's 2 different battles here. There's Arsuf and Horns of Hattin. This is Horns of Hattin. Then on the back side is Arsuf. So you're going to start with a certain number of these orders, and when you run out of these orders, when you put the last order in the box, you lose the game. So you want to protect these orders, and these orders are also how you pay for actions. And so, there's some good actions and there's bad actions. The good actions cost a little bit more, and so like for this to do this one, you have to pay 2 orders. And they don't go in the box; they just get used. And then after everybody has after you've gone through all your orders and both sides pass, you get whatever orders that you used back. If they go in the box, though, they're out of the game, and so that's how you lose the game. So it's a little bit of a puzzle. I played this. My daughter and I, my youngest daughter and I, played Arsuf, the battle on the other side, and it's a little puzzly because you're trying to figure out, manage your orders, because you have to use these orders. So if you're left with no orders left and you still have leaders that are out that haven't executed their orders yet, because when you execute the order, you flip the card over. So if you have leaders left, then you have to pick these 0 orders, and as I said, they're pretty bad because you're rolling the enemy's dice and you're only going to get hits on yourself. So that's the game, and sometimes there's some requirements to move from one position to another. Sometimes you have to pay extra orders, like if certain units are removed or whatever. There's some modifiers on here that you have to pay extra orders to do those certain actions. But as I said, it's relatively of a static battle in that these units are going to have a certain position on the board, and then you're basically removing them off the board. There might be some limited movement from one area to the next, but they're basically relatively set. And that's the game. So and it's based on the historical event, the Horns of Hattin, and how the knights had to kind of rush out and got surrounded, and they were kind of boxed in between these 2 mountains here, these 2 hills. And you basically have these historical orders too. There's like evade, rout, skirmish, harass, and the like. And some of these orders might have requirements depending on where you're at or what location you're at, and that's the game. You're also going to have overall leaders, and they might have different cards that come into play, or might have special abilities that come into play. Like Saladin, you can recover an order, recover a spent order, so that helps you, use better orders when you've spent a lot, or you can replace one lost unit. And again, once this fills up to 6, these all come off, and you lose an order as well, and that's what you're trying to avoid. So that is Saladin in a little bit of a nutshell. Don't use that as a way to play the game. Read the rules. And the rules aren't that complex, but it is a little bit different kind of game because of this order system and the static battle placement. And the dice are unique too. And the dice are wooden as well. You can see a little bit of rubbing coming off there because they're just kind of the icons are just kind of painted on. But this is how many hits they have, or you might lose an order and the like. And nothing's are bad for you because they're not doing anything to the other side. Anyway, there you have it. Saladin on the 4th of July. That's when this battle, the Horns of Houghton, took place. In Tales of War on Coffee with Kilroy. If you've played this game, if you have this book, love to know what you think about it. But if you've played this game, love to know what you think about it. I kind of like it. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It's a relatively quick game. The first time you play, it's going to take it's not necessarily intuitive, so you got to figure out a little bit how these orders work. And you really don't understand how the orders work until a few turns into it. So you probably want to play a second game after you've played the first one, once you've understood how these work. Because again, there's a little bit of a puzzle here of trying to get the optimal orders and trying to save something or use something and try to avoid the worst orders when you've ran out of order cubes or discs. Anyway, there you have it. That's Tales of War with special guests Saladin and the Horns of Houghton on the 4th of July. Again, I hope you all are being safe and enjoying your family and friends. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching.